Welcome to this episode of Eureka. About 50 years ago, India used to be in a situation what people used to describe as ships to lips, which means we have to wait for ships carrying food grains to arrive at our ports so that we can feed our population. Today, we are self-sufficient in our food grain production, but yet agriculture is in a new crisis and we have to look for new ways of facing these challenges. Today's guest, Dr. R.B. Singh, who was the former president of National Academy of Agricultural Sciences and also the Chancellor of Central Agricultural University, Mizoram, is going to discuss lots of issues, his past, how they faced the Green Revolution and then how they engendered the revolution and what we need to do today. Keep watching Eureka. We'll continue after a short break.
In recognition of his immense contribution to new knowledge, human resource capital, and the science-led transformation of agriculture towards the elevation of hunger and poverty in India and the Asia-Pacific region, Professor Ram Badan Singh was awarded the Padma Bhushan in 2003. He is the immediate past Chancellor of the Central Agricultural University, Imphal, and past President of the National Academy of Agricultural Sciences. Professor Singh received his PhD in genetics from USA in 1964 and possesses a career of leadership in improving agrarian livelihood, food nutrition and ecological security, climate-smart agriculture, and also in policy formulation. Professor Singh made important original contributions in the fields of genetics, plant breeding and biotechnology, and also prepared the roadmap for an evergreen revolution. During the past 53 years, Professor Singh held several other coveted positions both at national and international levels. He was member of the National Commission on Farmers from 2004 to 2006. He was also Assistant Director General of Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations and Regional Representative for Asia and the Pacific from 2000 to 2002. While with the FAO, Professor Singh assisted several developing countries in enhancing their human resources, research and technology development capacities, in augmenting productivity, sustainability, and profitability of major farming systems. At the national level, as member of the National Commission on Farmers, he shared the responsibility to suggest the government appropriate strategy, policy, and program interventions to enhance farmers' incomes and to alleviate hunger and poverty. As research and development leader, Professor Singh developed widely adopted modern varieties of wheat, rice, pulses, oilseeds and cotton, which has contributed and continue to contribute immensely to food, economic and livelihood securities. Professor Singh continues to provide science-led policy options and science-society interface geared to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals.
Sir, thank you for being with us. It's a very, very wonderful opportunity. I mean, you have had more than half a decade of experience in agricultural sciences. And I would like to ask you a question from your past. Long ago, I mean, you were born in a very small village to a farming family. From there, I mean, you studied in a very local school and perhaps in some colleges in Uttar Pradesh of those time. And then suddenly you went to US for doing your doctoral research. That should have been a very great cultural shock, is it not?
Well, not a cultural shock, but a very pleasant memory. First of all, I must say that I have been in agriculture for more than 50 years, half a century. As a matter of fact, I am born in an agriculture family. My father absolutely an agricultural farmer, almost illiterate, and so, but he made it sure that his children, that we must be educated, and he sent us to the all possible schools that we can really make use of it. So our early education was, of course, in the village primary, and then high school we finished. But then he brought me to Banaras. In that there is a very famous school called Uday Pratap College, Varanasi. As a matter of fact, one of our prime minister, former prime minister, was also
Alumni of that.
Yes. So this is where I was educated up to intermediate.
Suppose if you look at 60 years ago, I mean, that's when you would have done your.
Yes, in 64, to be precise. I finished my PhD in 64.
So that's a time when genetics was kind of cutting edge area.
Exactly.
I mean, it's not like something that many people were doing. Maybe you are one of the pioneers.
Right.
So what was the time like?
Well, it was very exciting. If I may also submit to you that one of the Nobel laureates, she was my teacher. And Barbara McClintock.
Oh, okay.
And her classes used to be always so interesting. She used to teach us cytogenetics, and that lady was like a full of energy, that person. And around her, the kind of entire staff, the entire system was so charged. So we had a wonderful teaching staff, we had wonderful colleagues, and many of those people who were my colleagues have become really the world famous scientists anywhere in the world. And then when I finished, I got postdoctoral fellowship offers from many universities. But then another interesting story, that was the time when Punjab Agriculture University was established in 62. They were filling their new positions with the new systems and so on and so forth. Sri P.N. Thakur was the Vice Chancellor, the first Vice Chancellor, and outstanding Vice Chancellor. I wish we have more Vice Chancellors like him. He was really, the post was advertised for an assistant professor and assistant cotton breeder. I applied for that. You will be surprised, within 2 weeks came the reply, no, we have appointed you as associate professor, as a reader, and a full economic botanist cotton. My eyes could not believe it. And then immediately I had to communicate, sir, probably there is a mistake that you have taken, given me the wrong post. He said, no, we have done it deliberately. We know you are only 24 years old. We know you have not worked on this crop, but we have seen your publications. We are so impressed, we would like you to come and join.
But this is where I want to ask you one question.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I mean, in those days, I mean, getting a job, particularly in a government institution, was a very major issue, and then you got it. But you were in US where lots of opportunities would have been before you, because you had experience in genetics, which is a cutting edge technology of those times. Why did you leave them and come here?
Well, I tell you, exactly. I felt that I could be more useful for my people. My nation needs me better than anywhere else, as a matter of fact. I can always go back to US anytime, no problem. But then that was the time. And particularly when here is a university offering me more than what I am asking, which I would have in olden days never gotten a position of that kind, doesn't matter how good am I. And I got that position to begin with my career. I said, my goodness, my country is great. I must go home and serve my country. And I came straight to Delhi, took the evening train, went to Ludhiana, joined this position in the morning in October 64, as a matter of fact. And P.N. Thakur gave me the first interview. He actually called me when he knew that I had joined, and he called me to his office and he gave me all the facilities.
That's a very interesting thing, and even today I think Punjab Agriculture University is one of the best universities in this country. I mean,
exactly.
It has maintained certain standards, and we hope that more institutions would follow suit.
I would love to see this happen and the case is replicated at more places.
We're talking about your journey back to India from US with lots of experience and scientific expertise. When you came, that was a time when India was poised to get into Green Revolution. Can you describe what was the condition that time and what was your role in the Green Revolution?
Well, as a matter of fact, when I reached home, of course, in those days, as you mentioned to begin with, ship to mouth was the situation. We used to import so much of grain from outside, PL 480 and so on, the obligations of one or the other nation, which was really a very derogatory situation for India as a whole. We as a scientist could never tolerate it, would never like to see this. We repeat it and our people suffer. So we are all determined that green revolution must come in, and fortunately it coincided that we had two outstanding developments, one in rice, one in wheat, and both had the semi-dwarf high-yielding varieties which came up, and both those kinds of materials were made available to India. One from International Rice Research Institute in the Philippines, and the other one from the CIMMYT in Mexico, the wheat program. And both were semi-dwarf varieties. Because being semi-dwarf varieties, they were able to tolerate lodging. They will not lodge under high input conditions. So if you apply more fertilizer, more water, and so on and so forth, that all goes into making grain, not the foliage, rather than the foliage, not the stalk. And therefore, we wanted more grain, and India needed it very badly. And this is where, when that happened, those high-yielding, new improved varieties immediately gave 1.5 to 2 times yield in the same fields. Where we used to have 1 ton, we started getting 2 tons, and so on and so forth.
Very, very interesting. One important question that people will have is that we are talking about times of 1960s. The literacy levels were so low. I mean, most of the farmers would be illiterate.
Yes, yes.
But then how did they cooperate with this modern science? I mean, did they not reject it, saying that we don't want, I mean, we have been doing things for us?
Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, when the farmers in Punjab, as a matter of fact, particularly, when they will come and see those crops, the university used to have really much more vigilance in the fields, that probably even if a grain is stolen, because those farmers were so enamored of those grains, and they would really, by hook or crook, they would like to obtain one of those grains. I myself took a few, I will say about half a kilo grain from Punjab Agriculture University to my village in eastern UP, next to in Ghazipur, next to Banaras, and in my village. And my farmer, illiterate farmer, but very wise man, very brilliant person, my father, he planted every grain that I gave him, individually, separately, and he was able to get the maximum yield out of it. And when the yield was obtained, then many farmers came and saw it, and everyone asked for probably a few grams here and there. As many farmers, they got it, and that was the spread, and that was the variety called Kalyan Sona, and then ultimately followed by Sonalika, and so on and so forth. This is how it started.
It's how it started. Now, in those days, quite obviously there would have been critics who would have said that such a move of getting seeds, etc., from outside may not be the right thing. What kind of problems were being raised?
Well, 2-3 kinds of problems, because we have been used to eating wheat which was like the Madhya Pradesh wheat, the old Punjab wheats, which we used to, jisko kanak kehte hain. This is something which is not there. Now then they felt that the grains were not the same, they were reddish, and not as bold and plummy as so and so forth, although they were rich in protein and other nutrients as much, or even better than that. But then that was the one criticism.
One is a look, basically.
Look basis, and the grain color, not amber color, not the wheat color, but the red color, and that was repelled by many people. Then the second one, that is such a huge amount of seed. You are importing 18 tons seed were imported in one go from Mexico. Borlaug, Dr. Swaminathan, Subramaniam, Sivaraman, these 3 essays really from Indian side, and Borlaug from the other side, they all combined together, and that we brought 18 tons of wheat seed of those varieties. But soon we were able to change it through our breeding program. Those red grains were converted into wheat, amber color grains, and then we got the varieties, and those 2 resistances which were there, and not even a single harm was done by those introduced. The farmers were so jubilant, they were so happy to see that their crops uniform, non-loss, every input they had applied has converted itself into grain, more grain, and so on. So it was a beauty to see. And so,
but today, if you look at the world outside, I mean, there are quite a lot of people who say that green revolution had actually caused a major havoc. There are lots of people who criticize green revolution as causing the crisis which we are facing today. So how do you see that?
Well, true. The green revolution technology per se is not to be blamed. It is how we use it. For example, if a given technology says that you apply 150 kg of nitrogen, phosphorus and potash in this proportion by so and so date in so and so manner, and you apply only 6-7 irrigations and so on and so forth, and first irrigation at this time. So, there is a package of technology. If that package is followed, then obviously there is absolutely no harm to water, no harm to the soil fertility, and nothing goes wrong as a matter of fact. But this did not happen. Very often you will find the farmers not adopting the right recommended technology package as a whole, and in that process there was a leakage in terms of nutrients, there was leakage in terms of water, overuse of water, overuse of nutrients, overuse of crops. As a matter of fact, for example, in Punjab we started taking rice and wheat. Rice and wheat both are cereals, both eating zones of their roots are more or less the same. So, the soil depletion of nutrients. So, the enrichment of the soil according to the depletion did not take place. So, the total nutrient management, soil health management, water management, all these were problems which if they are not really allowed to go wrong, there would have been nothing wrong. So, therefore, these were criticisms were not because of the technology per se or the gene per se, but because of the misuse or the improper use of the technology, which probably brought this bad name to green revolution. Otherwise, it is not at all to be blamed. As a matter of fact, now we talk of evergreen revolution, and evergreen revolution has to come when we remove all these defects.
Okay.
When we remove all these defects, so that agriculture becomes greener, green agriculture, green economy, evergreen everything, and with that sustainable development, and therefore, there is no depletion of the soil nutrient, there is no real mining of the groundwater to the extent that we have been doing.
Yeah.
We have to stop this. Many of the policy decisions were not right as a matter of fact, and so these problems came because of structural changes, non-use of the technology properly, and some of the policy decisions also. But I will say that technology is not to be blamed. We have to correct ourselves so that we can have evergreen revolution for all times, that we can increase agricultural productivity, because India needs it badly. 1.3 billion today, 1.67 billion by 2050, and with the land area decreasing, with the soil water availability decreasing, nutrients depletion and so on and so forth, we have a big challenge ahead, and therefore, I think our scientists friends
Must work on a new
must work on the new way of keeping it going. Keep it going.
That's, I think, a very important point. I mean, 60 years ago, perhaps, when food was a major challenge, we had no alternative but to go for some options like this. But then today, with the food stocks in availability, perhaps we should think of how rationally we will go forward. This is where we'll take a very short break. We'll continue this conversation. Keep watching Eureka.
सुशासन का एक ही सिद्धांत है, जो न्यायपूर्वक शासन करता है उसे बाद में पछताना नहीं पड़ता।
Welcome back to Eureka. We are having a very wonderful and a very informative conversation with Professor R.B. Singh, who was the former president of National Academy of Agricultural Sciences. Before the break, we were talking about the historical journey of Green Revolution, what it did, what kind of problems we are facing because of that today, and what we need to do, the evergreen revolution. Today, let's look at agriculture as a sector, and farmers as a section of our Indian society. Perhaps farmers today are the most distressed community in our country, right? Agriculture is in a great crisis. What do you think are the major challenges over there?
The first and the foremost challenge is that we have to bridge the income gap between the farmer and the non-farmers. It is 1:4, at times it is 1:5. And how can you live in such a high inequity and inequality? The very fact of inequality depresses the overall development.
Exactly.
And therefore, I think this is number one challenge we have to keep in mind.
That is doubling the farmer's income.
Doubling the farmer's income must be the national priority, foremost national priority and national movement to bridge that huge gap which exists today. How can we live in two Indias?
That's exactly
as a
right.
matter of fact.
Yeah, so this is the number one. Number two?
Number two, I feel, is despite our very high degree of satisfaction of food security, we are exporting up to $6 billion rice to the whole world, our new varieties of rice and so on and so forth, basmati. But still about 40% of the world's hungry children are Indian children.
Yeah.
Also 20-25% of the world hungry people are still Indian. Despite our having full food security, having reached almost 300 million tons of food grain, 310 million tons of fruits and vegetables, about 160 million tons of milk we produce, we are number one in the whole world as a matter of fact, yet. And mind you, this is the proportion of the hunger, malnutrition, poverty. And poverty and hunger, undernutrition, they are all interlinked. Therefore, if you have to remove all these three major sins of life, then obviously you have to make it sure that agriculture becomes more remunerative, more productive, less destructive, and so on and so forth, so that you can meet this very fundamental requirement of feeding our people with the proper nutrition, ensuring that the nutrition, undernutrition does not become a hereditary character. Otherwise, if a dwarf breeds dwarf, and if undernutrition has stunted children, 35% of the world's stunted children are Indian children, will their children be also stunted?
That's a big challenge.
That's a big challenge. And I put this question in front of everyone. So anything, whether it's the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Nutrition, Ministry of Commerce, whichever, everyone has to think about removing these three unholy alliances of poverty, undernutrition, hunger.
Sir, this is where I want to ask you one question. You have been a member of National Commission of Farmers.
I have.
So what do you think was need to be done? What is your recommendation?
As a matter of fact, the Farmers Commission had very profound recommendations. Number one recommendation actually was to enhance the farmers' income. So much so, we went to the level of saying that any agronomic trial which is conducted by a scientist must measure that in agronomic trial success in terms of income. Don't measure in yield, not in production, but measure in terms of net income what the farmer is getting.
That is a very different change, right? I mean, at a point of time when we wanted food grains immediately,
Exactly.
we were looking at production.
Right.
But today when we want to increase farmers' income, then we need to look at it in a completely different fashion,
Exactly.
right?
And diversified production, fruits, vegetables, milk, meat, all these things are extremely important so that you are able to make best use of your production resources in a differentiated, niche-oriented manner, and so that depending on your malady-remedy combination, wherever there is on the need base, you are able to undertake this thing. So I will feel very strongly that, mind you, again, those poor children are largely the poor children of poor farmers. So here you can see, this is where we recommended in the National Commission on Farmers income. Then we recommended the minimum support price to be C2 plus 50% of C2. We also recommended there should be a risk fund in the country which will take care of the disaster because of the climate change bringing so many disasters. So there should be a national risk fund. We also recommended there should be a national marketing system where every market is one, interconnected. There is no differentiation. Anybody can sell any product from anywhere to anywhere. We also recommended each village to be a knowledge center where everyone is able to share the information, what we call the e-skill development, e-norm and so on and so forth, was all conceptualized as a matter of fact in the National Commission.
That's I think a very important point. Some of the recommendations that you mentioned are very key and we need to take important steps.
And one more recommendation I will say, we had recommended in the National Commission that please change the name of the Ministry of Agriculture from the Ministry of Agriculture to the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare.
Oh,
this is a recommendation of our Commission, which I am glad the government has accepted. MSP has also been accepted and the income growth has been really emphasized. So thanks to the government, thanks to the current thinking, we need to implement it.
That's I think very important.
And we also recommended soil health card. It is the recommendation of the National Commission on Farmers to come up with soil health card. So we connected. So if the National Commission's recommendation had been taken seriously, we submitted the report in 2006. 2004 to 2006. In fact, I was the senior most member of the commission. Professor Swaminathan was the chairman. And so the recommendations, every word of it has a meaning. Had it been recommended in letter and spirit, probably would have been better off now. But hopefully, it will be now implemented, hopefully in letter and spirit in totality, so that India is different. And if India has to be new India, we have to go through the field of the smallholder farmer. So the way to new India is through the field of the smallholder farmer, and a smallholder farmer has to be prosperous. Only then you will have a new India.
That's I think a very, very important point. I want to shift to a completely different area. I mean, in between your half a century of career, you have been also with international agencies,
sure,
right? So what was your experience over there? What did we get from it? What did we give to them?
As a matter of fact, I was very fortunate to have 2 innings with Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. First, I was the head for the research, agriculture, production and so on for Asia Pacific. Then I was moved to Rome, where I was for 5 years in Rome looking at the research and technology development. And then, as a matter of fact, the position of Director of IRI was advertised. The then Minister of Agriculture was visiting Rome, Balram Zakharji, Manni Balram Zakharji. He knew me because I had worked in Punjab and he knew me. He was a cotton grower before he became a politician, a cotton farmer, and with that we were able to communicate. And I came back to India to be the Director of IRI, and from then again I went back as the Assistant Director General of FAO for Asia and the Pacific.
Okay.
And most important, that the what we call the cooperation among developing countries, TCDC, technical cooperation among developing countries, India played a very important role to go to Africa, to Latin America, to South Asia, many of the countries, and vice versa. One incident I would like to mention, when I was in FAO earlier, Sri Rajiv Gandhi was the Prime Minister, late Rajiv Gandhi ji. At that time, my Director General from Rome had visited India. Rajiv Gandhi ji asked him, can you bring hybrid rice to India? So my Director General asked me, because I was there as looking at the crop production. So asked me, can you do this? Immediately, I contacted my Chinese friend, the father of hybrid rice, Wang Langping, who has worked with me in the international system. So I brought him to India. FAO gave funding support to that purpose, and we were able to bring the hybrid rice situation to India through. So Chinese-India cooperation, I want to tell you, started. And today again, if you look for many cooperation between any 2 nations of the world, which can make a difference, if India and China cooperate in agriculture, no other country can beat it.
This is where we need to end this conversation for want of time, but we had a very, very wonderful, very informative and very nostalgic interaction with Professor R.B. Singh. Thank you for being with us in the show. Keep watching Eureka. We'll come back with another great conversation next week.